It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today is July 24th, and I want to welcome you to Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins, and every weekday you'll find me here telling you about what happened yesterday in the world of cloud native and open source and technology and other stuff. There's just so much going on out there that it's impossible to keep track of it all. So I want this show to be the place where you can learn about what's happening with the software and the solutions that we already use, and to discover new things that some of us have never heard of. I have some super cool stuff on today's list, so let's dive in. But actually, before we do that, I've made some changes to the streaming configuration. I spent some time last night doing path routing and stuff and figured out that there's actually one block of addresses in Sao Paulo that's about 80 milliseconds away from me. But the streaming provider that I use, Restream, to stream to multiple destinations, even though I'm only streaming to YouTube, if you pull their actual DNS name, it returns addresses from different blocks. So I've hard-coded that block, and hopefully we won't have any issues today. But if we do, let me know in the chat, and it's not like I can do anything about them, but, well, the internet is what it is, and I do live in South America. So anyway, let's get going. Yesterday, Lyft announced Clutch. I have mixed feelings about this one. Clutch is an open source tool. Well, they've open sourced it, but it's a tool for infrastructure management. And, well, like many tools, especially like many things from Lyft, it came out of a need that they had to provide a central location and an easy way for workflows when their engineers were troubleshooting issues. They found that people were spending more time looking in runbooks and documentation and logging into 16 different platforms to try and do stuff, that they decided to consolidate all of that with an easy backend that can have the logic of how to do things combined with a front end that people can click buttons on. It looks like it's going to be amazing, but right now it just doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. It only has the stuff that Lyft needed it to have, and that's totally fine. One of the benefits of open sourcing things is it gets it out there into the community so that people can start building their own connectors and backends and stuff for it. But just the architecture of it does look super sweet. It what's its backend? Its front end is React, and its backend is Go. And they have a demonstration either here or on the actual docs page. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there we go. So basically, with one line of code in the front end, you get this whole rendered thing that allows you to do stuff with AWS. So it's designed right now to like stop and start things and blow things up. But keep an eye on it because it looks like it's going to be super cool. They have documentation for it. One of the things I love is when people open source stuff that's feature complete or that includes documentation and like a whole web page and stuff like that. That shows that they actually planned the release. And just because it's open source doesn't mean it's not a valuable product. They've just generously donated it to the community for all of us to use. So check that out. That is Clutch from Lyft. Right now it can do basic tasks with AWS, Envoy, and Kubernetes, but it's certainly going to be able to do more in the near future. Conftest joined the Open Policy Agent project. Also, a bit of cool news. If you're not familiar with Conftest, it is a command line tool for testing configuration files and applying a declarative rule set to them to validate whether they're doing what they're allowed to do. They have examples of showing things like you can run it against your Kubernetes manifest to determine if they're trying to launch containers as root or if they don't have resources and limits set, but it has a whole rule set. The thing that's cool about it is it was built with Open Policy Agent in the backend. That's actually the engine for it. So it makes total sense that as a tool, it just joined the OPA project. OPA is something that It's funny, if you were in my intro to Kubernetes and Rancher training yesterday, OPA is something that I always forget the name of. I remember it as OPA because I don't know why that's easier to remember, but it's Open Policy Agent. And I stumbled over this yesterday. We are deploying this in Rancher because more people are doing stuff with OPA than are doing stuff with PSPs, pod security policies. It provides a more robust way to control what's going on inside of your Kubernetes cluster. And, well, yeah, it's the future. Congratulations, Comptest, for joining OPA. Here's the actual repo for Comptest, where they have more examples and a sample of the rule set and stuff like that. Amazon released their own... Hey, good morning. We got people in the chat now. Sajad, Justin, Marcel, Brendan, and Jamo. Thanks for joining, everyone. Amazon released their own CIS benchmarks. This is so totally an Amazon move. The CIS benchmarks, I was having a conversation in the Rancher user Slack with somebody about this yesterday. He asked me why the Rancher hardening guide for 2.4 only covers Kubernetes 1.15. Right now we're on Kubernetes 1.18. And the reason for that is because the Rancher hardening guide is based off of the CIS benchmarks for Kubernetes because it's important to have a standard body that we are all referencing. And the CIS benchmarks are on version 1.5.1, and that only covers Kubernetes through 1.15. They have a 1.6 coming out that'll cover all the way up to 1.18, but it's not out yet. Now, granted, their benchmarks only cover Kubernetes, and EKS is more than Kubernetes. The Amazon blog talks about where the responsibility lies between the control plane and the workers, and how that shared responsibility model actually moves as you move from EKS using Amazon for your workers all the way to EKS using Fargate for your workers, where more of the management shifts from the end user responsibility, end user in the sense of the person who actually has the Amazon account and is paying for things, into Amazon's responsibility. And so they built their own CIS benchmarks and they gave it to CIS. They're like, hey, here you go. Woo! That's specifically for EKS. What they also did, I didn't even know that this existed. Here's their little shared responsibility model. This is pretty cool. What they also did is they gave you a test environment on eksworkshop.com. These are tutorials on how to do stuff with EKS, so you can actually practice running the benchmarks against a cluster and then taking remediation actions to fix the things that it says you should fix. And you can do this before you go and slap all the stuff on your production cluster and do, who knows what to it. They also have a section here on using KubeBench, which is Aqua's tool for doing security analysis of Kubernetes clusters. If you're running EKS, run this against your clusters. Sysdig has come up a lot this week. It's because they're doing cool stuff. There was a CVE that came out about 10 days ago, and it's technically of medium severity. Oh, first of all, can I rant for a moment? There was a bunch of stuff that was sent to me on Twitter yesterday where somebody has a thing about if you have root access to a box, shock, surprise, you can get access to all of the Kubernetes stuff that's running on it, and you can view secrets, and you can shut down nodes and stuff. You have root on the box. If you have root access on the box, you can do anything to anything that's on there. So I don't look at that and say, oh, this is a security risk. The whole idea, behind running a Kubernetes cluster is like it's here, and then like there's some sort of barrier, and then there's the rest of the world, and you want to keep people from getting access to your box from Kubernetes, so they're not doing privilege escalation from your app to the pod to the node to actually getting root on the box. If you've got somebody who's already got root on your box, you failed. That's not a CVE. I mean, well, it is, but you're the CVE. This is a little bit different. This is a CVE for a denial of service attack, or well, not really attack, but a DOS situation where somebody can slam Etsy hosts in the container and cause a denial of service against the host itself. Okay, yeah, we need to fix that. But I love Sysdig. They came out and they said, hey, look at that. If you're using Falco, here's how you can detect it. Falco is Sysdig's open source runtime threat detection for containers in Kubernetes. So if you remember in yesterday's session, we talked about Sysdig had an article on the various places. I'm pretty sure it was Sysdig. Somebody had an article on the various places where you can apply image scanning and other security things. Well, image scanning is just one piece of your security posture. You also need something that can do runtime threat detection of the stuff that's going on in your cluster. That's what Falco does. And it's open source, and you can go and deploy it and play it. And super. They have Sysdig Secure that does some more stuff on top of it, but you don't need that unless you do. So they have this nice little blog where they say, here's how you can detect that CVE with Falco, so you can know if somebody's trying to do it. But then they go one step further because they're awesome, and they talk about how you can actually mitigate the CVE before it's actually patched in upstream Kubernetes. That is really nice stewardship of the community. So check this out. Patch your clusters. Moving on. Yesterday we talked about chaos engineering. Yesterday I also said that I have no idea what day it is. I don't actually know if it was yesterday or the day before. Sometime this week we talked about... I'm going to start saying that. This week we talked about chaos engineering. Hey, Ariel. Hey, Hub. Welcome. So chaos engineering. This is a thing. Ripping the heart out of your workloads and watching them recover. Because we're all sadists. Maya Data, they're the people behind OpenEBS and Kubera and a bunch of other stuff. They, about a month ago, it was at the end of June, they got Litmus into CNCF. Let's actually look at here. This is an engine for chaos engineering in Kubernetes, and they have a whole article on how you can do stuff with it, and it's fully featured and quite a nice solution. This blog is about monitoring the experiments that you run with Litmus. So it's an excellent demonstration of using multiple technologies to take your Litmus data and get it into something where you can actually view it. Because as people, we're terrible at looking at data streams and detecting anomalies and patterns. So here they give you information on how to use Prometheus and Grafana, and I think they actually use, Event Router from Heptio. So going from Litmus into Event Router, into Prometheus, and then into Grafana, where suddenly you're able to see stuff like that. And you can see the effect that the chaos engineering experiments had on your environment. As I chase down stories, I do this every night. I finish my workday, I have dinner with my wife, we watch like a little bit of a movie or YouTube, or we learn about something or whatever, and then I come back and I sit down at my computer for about 3 hours and I start collecting all the stories that are going to become next day's show. That's why the night tweet always says topics are in. It's because I've decided from the list of stuff that gets presented to me throughout the day what is going to be in the show tomorrow. What I've discovered is that a lot of these things weave back and forth into one another, either on different days or even within the same day, like today, where we've gone from Litmus to Heptio's Event Router. And in this blog, they make mention of... Where is it? All right, they make mention of Zebrium. I found Zebrium last night through a different channel, and then I was excited when reading this article to see that they're also mentioned here. Zebrium is magic. Way back in the day, back when some of you probably were still in high school, and I was doing security stuff for US media companies. I had a managed services provider that built and managed data centers in the US and Europe for companies like BET and Sesame Street and Scholastic and a bunch of others. And there was an Israeli company whose name I don't remember that had a new firewall product that used fuzzy logic, fuzzy logic, that used fuzzy logic for real-time dynamic threat detection and response. We had things like Snort, we had intrusion detection systems, but intrusion prevention systems were new, and everything was still signature-based, and therefore it was always false positives, and it was a big pain. These guys, they basically had a chip that watched the traffic going through and created with some primitive AI an understanding of what the traffic flow was. And when something deviated from the normal flow, so basically the longer it's watching the traffic go through transparently, as it sat between the in and the out on the network port, the longer they were watching it go through, the better they understood what was normal behavior according to time of day, day of week, things like that. And when something deviated from that, all they did was they just paused it for a second to see what happens. And they're able to expand on that and say, okay, if there's an actual person behind this, if, let's say we're seeing lots of 404s or lots of, errors coming back from the web server, if there's a person behind this, then when we throttle it for a moment and let it go, the behavior will change. If it's not a person, the behavior will continue exactly the same because it's a machine just, pounding on whatever is on the other side of this device. And that enabled them to do threat prevention. And it was amazing. Now it sounds like whatever, but this was 2002, something like that. So, woo, cutting edge back in the day. We were all young. And it was magic. These guys have something similar that's more advanced and specifically for log data. Our systems today generate massive amounts of log data. I remember when Splunk first came out, and it was like, wow, this is really cool. And the result of having better systems for collecting log data is that you send more log data to them. You end up with this massive thing. Splunk can do all of the cross-referencing of stuff by consolidating. Watch the video that these guys have on their site. Blah, blah, blah. There we go. Down here, 2-minute video. All they do is show you the product. It's not a sales video. And granted, this is a paid product, but you can get started for free, like everything. It's a paid product, and it should be. You just start feeding it log data, and in no time at all, it understands what's going on, and it can not only detect anomalies, but it can detect incidents. It then continues to tell you what the root cause of the incident was. So by the time you get an alert on your phone or your whatever you have in your house, your sirens, I don't know. By the time your boss calls you and says there's something wrong, this system has already told you not only what's wrong, but why. And you can get right to fixing the actual problem instead of wasting time going through all of this log data to try. It's like, you can imagine, a movie where they had reams of the dot matrix printer on the wheels and they're like throwing it around and it's all connected by the perforation. Yeah, no more of that. Zebrium has a webinar coming up on the 30th. So that's 6 days from now. Join it. Check it out. This looks super cool. And you can actually look at the bio of Rod, who's one of their co-founders. This is basically all that this dude has done for the last 20 some odd years. Check them out. You're going to be hearing a lot more about them in the future. And once again, here we are in another thing that's going to weave back and forth. If you don't know Jerome Pettazzoni, you've been living under a rock. Or you just weren't playing with Docker in the early days. I don't actually know if he was with Docker, but I know that when we started doing stuff with containers, his container images kept coming up as really cool cutting edge stuff. He would need a VPN, so he just built OpenVPN into a container and put it out there. He's always done really cool stuff. And even though he and I have never met, I always feel like, he's always like in the aisle next to me or something. Like we're kind of in the same slipstream as we're moving through all of this stuff. He wrote an article about ENV0. ENV0 is a new company, and their stuff is currently free. They have a free tier that's actually fine for people like myself who are just, have home labs and who do things for demos. But their paid tier, their lowest paid tier, is also free right now while they're in beta. So they're worth going and checking out. ENV0 allows you, or you can be as a person or an enterprise or whatever, to manage your cloud spend by creating rules that define what your users are allowed to do. One of the problems that we all have, and the reason that the whole only pay for what you use cloud model works, is because we, again, as humans, are terrible at remembering what we launched. Most companies who go in and audit your cloud spend and tell you where you can save money, save most of your money by finding unused snapshots and deleting them. Because storage, you pay for storage. So every time you snapshot your disk, you pay for all of that. And then people forget about it, or they think, yeah, backups are great, I'll keep backups for a year, and they're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. In fact, about a week into March, one of my friends shared that with me. That's his company's cloud spend on Amazon. A week into the month. $900,000. Projected spend for the month, $2,443,806.40. Probably not that accurate, but oh my gosh, they spent $3.2 million last month. I don't know where he works. I don't know what they do, but I 100% guarantee you that there is an opportunity to save money there. And I don't care how much money you have, saving it is still good. Not just, let me find an alternative verb here, not just wasting it, not just frittering it away. There you go. We'll use the verb fritter. We're running out of time. Anyway, ENV0. We also had a problem at Rancher where engineers would spin up instances to do demos for clients and stuff, and then either they wouldn't get shut down, they'd forget to shut them down, end of the month comes by, and that's the face that the CEO or that the finance people made when they saw our Amazon bill. We now have a lot of rules in place. ENV0 will allow you to do things like spin your clusters up and down when you need them, shut down development clusters at the end of the day, give people the power to spin clusters up under control, and then also, it does a bunch of really cool stuff, and it's totally free right now, so there's no reason not to go check it out. But jumping back to this weaving of stuff, Jerome gives you a nice demo of how he uses ENV0 to spin up dev clusters and spin up clusters that he uses for training. ENV0 uses Terraform, so he talks about that, and it's a really long blog. That's the other thing about him. He writes really, 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 really thorough content. He should make videos, but he's a writer. So there you go. Jerome, ENV0, oh my gosh, spending way too much money on Amazon. And then because I've run in the same circles as Jerome for a while, I did not know that he currently makes most of his money, as he says on his blog, from Docker and Kubernetes training. He has a page up here on container.training where he's got some of his slides and videos up from past workshops that he's done. It looks like he was doing a boot camp. He needs to update his webpage. But there's a lot of resources here if you're learning about Docker, containers, and Kubernetes. And he deserves support because he's done a lot for the community. All right. 23 minutes in, tool of the day. Today's tool of the day is actually two tools. It's kubectx, which combines kubectx and kubens. These are two tools that I use every day. And in my trainings, people often ask, what was that thing I just saw you do? It's this. If you work with multiple Kubernetes clusters, or even if you work with multiple namespaces in a single Kubernetes cluster, particularly namespaces, the process of switching namespaces using kubectl is just unreasonably complicated. If, however, you are like me, and you have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of YAML files for all of your clusters, as long as you have each of the contexts uniquely named, you can just type kubectx, and it uses FZF to show you the contexts that you have. And if you don't know about FZF, it's a fuzzy logic engine. It's the backend for a lot of stuff that I use, including Control R in my fish shell, this, NS, as you'll see in a second. So as I start typing, it filters the list into the things that are relevant. And then I can just press enter and it'll automatically switch to the appropriate context. Once I'm there, I actually have this alias as KCC, and I can also just do KCCTO because I know, my clusters are, so KCC home. And it will switch me to the correct context out of that big long chain of kubeconfig files. Once I'm there, you can do the same thing with kubeNS, which I've aliased to NS. And this will, once again, it'll reach out to the cluster, pull back all the namespaces, run it through FZF, and as I start typing, it will filter things down to whatever. Or you can just say NS default, and it will switch you to the correct namespace. The combination of those two tools will save you massive amounts of headache, reduce your cognitive load, make your life better, give you more time to drink coffee, make you a nicer person at work. Anything that can reduce frustration, we need it. So kubectx, kubeNS, the links for this will be in the video description and the show notes afterwards. That is, wow, I'm 4 minutes under. That's all I've got today. Let's just check the chat, see if anyone has any questions. Jama says, as people, we are terrible at pattern recognition. We are. Like, I consider myself really good at it, but I'm much better at it with graphs. I love graphs. I have, can I just show you my home graphs really quick since we have like 2 minutes here? I built a whole engine for my home automation system, but primarily for my solar controller, my charge controllers, and the inverter, and their management thing uses MQTT. It's from a company called Victron. And so I built this whole engine using Node-RED, and then I extract lots of data from the MQTT server, and I shove it all into Grafana. And I have dashboards on iPads on the wall in the living room. So I'm walking around the house, I can see what the current state is of the solar generation, how full the batteries are, time to go, various other things. And then it all goes into Grafana for historical reference, and I use this when I need to know things like, how effective. I just resized my solar array, and I was able to do that because I saw that the winter before, it was basically useless. So I knew how much power we were consuming compared to how much power we generated, compared to when the house is in shadow, because there's a big hill over here. In wintertime, the sun just barely traverses the hill. Visual stuff, if you can get any of your data into a visual thing and start to make correlations between it, and any tool that will help you do that will make it much easier for you to make informed decisions. I love my Grafana graphs. I just sit here, I have this in a tab, and when I'm like, between tasks and I just want to feel good, I just go and look, and I'm like, oh, we're generating so much power not right now because the sun's not up yet. But Trix thinks I made a joke, and I don't know. Okay, Ariel says Crew is awesome for using those two tools and finding more. Crew is a tool. Let's actually jump back off of this to something else. Crew is a tool that allows you to install other tools. And earlier this week, we also featured Arcade. I know Alex Ellis, so I'm somewhat biased in that I want to promote his project Arcade, but I also want to make sure that the information I'm presenting on this show is as unbiased as it can be. Obviously, I work for Rancher, so you're not going to find me promoting in the tool of the day things that directly compete with Rancher, because that would just be stupid for me. What you will find, though, is that if other tools have new features, new releases, anything that is news, I will talk about those things in the first portion of the show. So I'm happy to tell you that Kubler has a new version that does this, this, and this. That's just data. But I'm not going to tell you that Kubler is a tool that you can use to do that, that, and that, because that, I'm not gonna get myself fired. Crew, obviously I don't work for Alex. But I looked at crew and I looked at arcade and I said, why would, without knowing any of the people involved, why would I choose one over the other? I might choose crew because it has more stuff that it can do. But crew is really designed for CLI things on your, like, that either work directly with kube control or that you can run, like we used kube capacity yesterday, which you can install from crew. Oh, I gotta show you something really funny, and then I'll finish my rant. Arcade, which actually is under the Arc alias as well, Arcade can not only install CLI utilities, but it can install packages and solutions into your Kubernetes cluster. You can't do that with crew. So you can do arc install cert manager, and it's going to do everything related to cert manager to installing that into whatever Kubernetes cluster is your primary context. The thing about Arcade is that it doesn't have a lot of stuff in it yet, but it's also very new. I would very much like to see us take everything that's in crew and get it into Arcade, because if we can do that, Arcade becomes even more valuable. And I want to promote Alex. But yes, crew exists. Now the funny thing is you can use Arcade to install command line utilities. So the other night I was like, can I do arc install crew? It's a no op. It doesn't tell you that you can't, it just doesn't do it. I thought that was really funny. So, on that note, that's all I've got for you today. I'll post all the links in the video description and the repo as soon as the show ends. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a notification when that happens. If you have something that you'd like me to talk about here, hit me up, let me know. My contact details are in the video description, and plus I'm not hard to find on the internet. You can also tweet with the CNCN hashtag, and one of us will pick it up. If I mention a tool that you use, let me know in the comments. Please share this video with people. If you like what you saw today and you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe, click the little bell, you'll get a notification when the next show starts. This was the first week. Thank you to all of you who came and hung out with me. I will be here again on Monday. We're going to do this for another week, and I really want to see this grow. I'll be here as long as there's something to talk about. And in my experience, there's always something to talk about. So please, have a great day and keep learning. We'll see you next week.